Welcome to Game Discovery, and a new monthly series that I'm going to be doing, highlighting old indie games that either have been completely forgotten about or never discovered in the first place. All the indie games in this episode are at least 10 years old. Many of these games nobody knew about and have just been lost to obscurity. A few others did get some time in the spotlight, but are not really talked about anymore. Let me know down in the comments how many of these games, if any, you've heard of, and let's get into it. Our first game on the list is definitely the most prominent one. Runner 2 is part of a 3-game series of auto-running platformers, and in my view is the best of this series. In fact, I will go as far as to say this is the best runner game ever made. It is just completely fantastic. The premise is really simple. Your character auto-runs, and you have to dodge everything in your way, but as the game progresses, you unlock new moves, and the levels get increasingly complex. The difficulty curve is smooth, and the game is incredibly addicting. It is one of those games that anyone could pick up and know exactly how to play in 2 seconds. At the same time, it offers a ton of complexity and brilliant level design to keep even the most hardcore players challenged. There is a ton of content here as well. Over 100 levels, tons of secrets to find, and other unlockable. All accompanied by an incredible soundtrack that gives the game a nice rhythmic feel as you race around the varied environments. This game was released on Steam in 2013. While it definitely was prominent at the time, it never gets mentioned much anymore, which is a shame because it really is an incredible game and definitely one worth remembering. I really miss the old Kratos. You know, before he became a dad and wandered around boring open world environments for 100 hours, he was in some killer action games that just featured non-stop visceral combat and inspired a generation of copycats. This game here, called Garshasp the Monster Slayer, is one of those copycats. Now look, I'm not going to pretend this is anywhere near as good as God of War. As you look at the trailer here, you can see it does look kind of cheesy, and it is. But you know what? It's still a pretty good time and sells for $5. It explores the lore of Persian hero Garshasp. That's pretty cool, as that is a lore not really explored much in gaming, and more or less plays like you'd expect. Yeah, some fun combat, cool finishers, some fun weapons, mildly annoying platforming, you know, all the things you love from God of War are here. If you never played God of War, definitely play them first. But if you're like me and you just really miss that era of gaming, Garshasp is pretty fun and well worth it for the low asking price. Momodora is easily one of my favorite Metroidvania series. I think its games have a good amount of popularity and notoriety in the past couple of years, with the last 2 entries, Reverie Under the Moonlight and Moonlit Farewell, both receiving critical acclaim and a physical release from Limited Run. On a personal note, the Momodora series is easily in my top Metroidvanias of all time, right next to Guacamelee, but some people may not know that Reverie was actually the 4th game in this series. The footage you see here is from Momodora 3, that sells in the Steam store for the whopping price of $2. Unlike the later entries in the series, this is a linear action platformer. You go through 6 stages with well-designed levels and fun classic action platforming. It's a short romp. I think the whole thing took me a little over an hour to beat on my first try, but I had a good time with it, and if you love the later entries in the series as much as I do, I think it's worth checking out, just for no other reason than to see the origins of those other amazing games. If you're looking for another awesome Metroidvania, this is not it, but $2 for an hour of solid linear platforming is definitely worth it in my book. If you are like most of us, you probably love Cowboys and Contra. Now, when I said those 2 words together, you probably also thought of Sunset Riders, and I don't blame you. That game is fire. But do you remember these 2 other Cowboy Contras that were released for the 3DS and later ported to other systems? I am, of course, talking about Gunman Clive 1 and 2. Released on Steam way back in 2014. Hard to believe that was 12 years ago. Where the heck did the time go? These are a pair of fantastic run-and-gun action platformers that play kind of similar to Contra, only set in a Wild West theme. And although the theme is the Wild West, the game does not always stick to typical conventions of that time period. I won't spoil too much, but the game does get pretty wacky. The platforming is fun, shooting is satisfying, and you can pick up both games for about $5 total. If you haven't ever tried these games, now is the time. They are as awesome as they ever were and dirt cheap. Demon Hearts, released in 2015, is currently sitting at 23 Steam reviews and is one of the more obscure games on this list. That's a shame because this game is awesome. It's a rage platformer that has an aesthetic very similar to Electronic Superjoy, only it would be like if you merged the graphic style of that game with the theme of Ghosts and Goblins. It's probably the best way to describe the graphics and environments. And much like Electronic Superjoy, there's also a pretty kicking soundtrack, which always helps when you're dying a ton, which you definitely will. This game has you playing as a demon girl who could jump and teleport around, kind of like Dracula, as she turns into some bats and bamps around the environments. There's some other characters you can unlock as well. The game is difficult and you will die, but it's not overly punishing as you navigate your way through the game's 50 or so levels. My first playthrough took me almost 2 hours to finish and I had a really good time with it. Level design is fun, there are some great boss battles thrown in, and the aesthetic here is really cool. This is one of those games that nobody has ever heard of, and given how old it is, I doubt anyone new is running into it on the Steam store, but give it a look if you like these kind of games. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Well, maybe you're looking for a challenging platformer and are just not into waifus and you're looking for a nice classic anime mascot to play as. If that's the case, the next game, Mr. Bree Plus, should be right up your alley. Taking a page out of Super Meat Boy's playbook, although here you're playing as pork instead of beef, Mr. Bree tells a tale of a pig trying to get back his memories and his family. The game takes itself a little bit too seriously in this regard, but you could just skip the story and enjoy the rage-inducing platforming. The levels are not long, but they are absolutely riddled with spikes and other things that are trying to kill you. There are checkpoints sprinkled throughout the level, so you are not forced to restart the level each time you die. This definitely helps the game feel a little easier than some of its inspirations, as it is a little more forgiving. The difficulty curve here is pretty good as well, and as you progress through the game, Mr. Bree gets back his lost memory, which gives him access to new moves, increasing the complexity of the level design and helping the game to feel fresh. This is a fun little game that fans of rage platformers should check out, but even if you don't typically like the genre, you might enjoy this, as it is a little more forgiving than most games of this type. It originally released on Steam in 2013 and is sitting at about 112 Steam reviews with a retail price of $3. Cataegis The White Wind is an 8-bit action platformer that feels a bit like Strider and Ninja Gaiden. Not as great as those classics, but there is a lot to like here. You play as a dude cosplaying as the White Power Ranger on a quest to defeat an evil organization. The story is told through cutscenes just like the classics, and depending on how you play, you can unlock one of 20 different endings. The gameplay here is old school action platforming. You get a sword and a variety of other weapons as the game progresses. It's a very difficult game. Expect to die a ton, both on the levels and on the bosses as you learn all their patterns. Just like the old school though, it is very rewarding when you take down a boss that seems impossible the first time you fought him. The game is a little forgiving in that you get 3 lives and unlimited continues. When you die, you instantly respawn from where you died, but when you run out of lives, you get set back, but at least you do have some margin of error. This is a really fun game that is worth it for fans of stuff like Ninja Gaiden. My first playthrough took me just a little bit over an hour, but you are incentivized to go back and replay it to see the different endings. This game, released in 2015, is currently sitting with 22 Steam reviews. It sells full price for $5, and I think for that price, it's a pretty easy buy. Our last game on today's list is the oldest one, releasing in 2011 and published by Sega, called Renegade Ops. This is a twin-stick shooter that has you playing as vehicles just blowing everything up. It's almost as if Michael Bay decided to make a video game. There is a plot here, but don't worry about it. This game isn't about the story. It's just about blowing up everything you can in action-packed levels filled with cool set pieces and destructible environments. The pacing of this game is really fantastic, as it is just non-stop action, and I love games like that. It also offers 4-player online co-op. I think it's safe to say that you're not going to find any multiplayer games here in 2026, but there's also local co-op for up to 2 players. And honestly, this is the perfect game to boot up with a friend, go through its campaign, and just blow everything away. I remember when I was teaching summer school, I would bring my laptop in and play this game co-op with my students, and we all had a blast, pun intended. One odd thing about the game is that it still retails for $15, which is kind of high for a game that released 15 years ago. It still goes on sale, and I know during the last winter sale it was selling for under $4. So I actually do think the game is worth full price. At this point, you could just be patient and wait for a sale. You've already waited 15 years. What's another couple of months till the next sale? So thank you for watching my very first episode of Forgotten Old Indies that you need to remember. Let me know what you think of these choices and which games you've heard of and which games you might want to check out. Also, if there's an old indie game that you feel has been forgotten or would like to see featured in this series, let me know down in the comments below.